Hello. Everyone's life frequently surprises them. That's exactly what happened to me on an otherwise ordinary Wednesday evening. I had just returned from work, my heels tapping across the wooden floor as I entered the home. The day had been long and exhausting, and all I wanted to do was relax in a hot bath and let the stress wash away. I had no idea that evening would have a profound impact on my life, fundamentally altering the course of everything in our home. Make sure to subscribe to my channel until the conclusion, and please like the video because this narrative will be quite intriguing. Please click the like button to express your support. The home was silent as I arrived, which was not unusual. My husband Thomas had said earlier in the day that he would be attending a late meeting. He'd been working long hours lately, attempting to meet a major project deadline. This left just Logan, Thomas's kid from his previous marriage, at home. Logan, 20, was a shy but charming young guy who rarely created difficulty. He worked part-time at the local hardware shop and spent the majority of his leisure time in his room. Though we were not particularly close, we had a pleasant friendship based on mutual respect. I'd always thought of him as someone who respected his space and solitude, much like his father. I had become accustomed to the tranquility of the house when there were only the two of us. As I placed my suitcase on the kitchen counter and got myself a drink of water, I spotted Logan's pickup, parked in the driveway. Odd, I thought. He frequently worked the late shift. I nonchalantly shouted out his name, and my voice echoed around the empty home. No answer. I didn't think much of it because I assumed he was in his room, perhaps listening to music or asleep. After drinking my water, I decided to go upstairs and change into something more comfortable. After such a long day, all I wanted to do was rest. As I passed by the bathroom, I noted the faint sound of running water and the slightly open door. This struck me as unusual. Logan was very particular about privacy. He always locked doors tightly, especially the bathroom door. My interest piqued. I paused for a bit before softly pulling the door open somewhat more. What I saw brought me to a halt. Logan was standing by the sink. His back was turned to me, and his shoulders slumped in a way that suggested he was focused on something. His motions were uncomfortable, almost frenzied, and I realized he was shirtless with his pants falling loosely over his hips. He looked to be holding a washcloth and washing something out of sight. The creak in the door shocked him. He turned around, his eyes wild with fear. "Oh my God, I didn't hear you come," he said, his voice shaking. I halted, similarly astounded, shifting my glance between him and the washcloth, feeling a sensation of unease wash over me. It wasn't what I expected to see when I went in, and I couldn't help but feel awful for intruding. "I'm very sorry," I whispered, turning my attention away. "I didn't intend to." I took a quick step back, my pulse racing in my chest, and reached for the doorknob, ready to retire and provide him with the alone he clearly craved, but Logan's voice halted me before I could lock the door. "Wait," he begged, with his tone. "It's not like you." I think I paused, my hand hanging over the doorknob. Half of me wanted to flee down the corridor and pretend nothing had occurred, but another half was intrigued. His voice did not convey the defensiveness of someone caught doing something wrong. Instead, it was full of humiliation and despair despite my better judgment. I turned back to face him, my gaze fixed on his features. "Okay," I said, carefully attempting to maintain a neutral tone. "What's happening?" Logan glanced down at his tray. Despite the terrible circumstances, my fascination intensified as he moved uncomfortably and avoided eye contact. It was personal. He admitted, "I've been having some problems, Dad, and I'm not sure what to do." Logan had always maintained his independence, seldom divulging personal details, so the notion that he was seeking my help made me pause. I walked inside the bathroom. I shut the door slightly behind me to give us some privacy. "Okay," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Why don't you tell me what's happening? Logan hesitated before trying to explain. At first, his words were hazy as he struggled to convey the agony he was experiencing. I attentively listened, attempting to piece together what he was saying. It quickly became evident that this was a delicate subject, one that he was too embarrassed to address with Dad. As he spoke, attention to these details demonstrates that you care about your health. Second, there is no shame in asking questions or getting guidance. Logan gazed up at me, his eyes full of appreciation and relief. Really? You don't think this is strange? Not at all, I reassured him. Everyone has questions about their bodies from time to time. It's normal. I spent the next several minutes giving him the best advice I could give, based on my own expertise and experience. I attempted to keep the topic as realistic and straightforward as possible, avoiding anything that may make him feel more and more uncomfortable. I could tell this chat was a big relief for him. Even if it began awkwardly, as the talk went on, the initial uneasiness subsided. Logan appeared to relax, and I could see he was glad to have someone to chat with him. He appeared to be more at ease by the end of our conversation. He even managed a little smile. "Thank you," he replied slowly, his voice hardly a whisper. "I didn't think I could tell anyone about this." I returned his grin, relieved that the tension had lifted. "You are welcome." Logan, remember that it is never inappropriate to seek assistance. No one knows all the answers. As I exited the toilet, I couldn't help but have a peculiar mix of feelings. On the one hand, I was pleased to be there for Logan when he needed someone to talk to. On the other hand, the incident had been so unexpected and out of the norm that I had no idea how to handle it. Something about the event felt momentous, as if it represented a transition in our relationship. I just wasn't sure what it meant or how it would play out in the next few days. I tried to dismiss the unusual sensation as I went about my evening, but it persisted in the back of my mind like a shadow. The home was peaceful, with only the gentle hum of the air conditioner. Thomas arrived home late that night, exhausted yet pleased. He was absolutely oblivious to the unusual talk that had occurred during his absence. As I lay in bed that night looking at the ceiling, I couldn't help but think about the events of the evening. Something had changed, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. All I knew was that life in our home will never be the same again. The days after that unexpected encounters were unusual, to say the least. Nothing very dramatic occurred. In fact, everything on the surface seemed normal. Thomas continued with his task as usual. Logan stuck to his part-time shift and study schedule, while I continued to balance my home and work duties. But behind the surface, Logan and I had an unsaid but susceptible tension. Logan had always eluded me, concealing the majority of his life from me. Our interactions, while friendly, had never progressed beyond surface-level niceties. But suddenly, following our toilet discussion, I sensed a new level of understanding between us that was both unpleasant and strangely soothing. I was chopping veggies after his shift at the hardware store when I heard his pickup pull into the driveway. I paused my knife in midair, thinking how I should greet him. The awkwardness that had fallen between us over the past several days had established a barrier that I wasn't sure how to break down when the front door opened, and I yelled, "Hey, Logan." He did not react right away, attempting to seem nonchalant, but I heard his footsteps as he entered the kitchen. He appeared fatigued but smiled faintly. "Hey, what are you having for dinner?" Smiled back, relieved that he wasn't as distant as he had been in previous days. "Just some pasta." "Are you famished?" "Sure, I am. I'm hungry," he said, stepping over to the counter to get a drink of water. We ate quietly at first, with the only sound being the clink of forks on plates, but I noticed Logan appear more relaxed than he had in days. His grin appeared more genuine, and his body language was less rigid. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I felt a strong feeling of pride for him. He was learning to communicate, seek help, and manage his emotions in a healthy manner. I couldn't help but feel like I was seeing an important time in his development. The next day, Thomas arrived home from work earlier than normal. I could see tiredness on his face. However, his steps were going well, I replied, smiling. Nevertheless, I feel Logan is thinking about something. Thomas raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He's been more open recently, I said, and he said he wanted to speak with you about something important. Thomas's countenance softened with a mix of anxiety and eagerness on his face. I'll talk to him, he said with calm conviction in his voice. Thank you for telling me that evening after supper. Thomas and Logan sat together in the living room. Couldn't hear much of their talk, but I noticed Logan leaning in and conversing passionately with his father. Thomas listened closely to his expression, filled with both worry and warmth. I observed that Logan's transition into maturity marked a significant turning point in their relationship, and Thomas was prepared to meet him there. As the weeks passed, life resumed its normal pattern. Logan and I's UNS said tension dissipated over time. He no longer avoided me, and I could see he was still absorbing what he'd said, but he appeared lighter and more himself. Thomas and Logan spent more time together, which strengthened their relationship, and Thomas was clearly trying to be more present for his kid. One weekend, Thomas recommended we go on a day excursion to the lake. It was his attempt to build our friendship, and I felt it was an excellent idea. The weather was ideal, with beautiful blue skies and a mild wind. We packed a lunch, drove to the lake, and spent the day relaxing and having fun. We spent hours swimming, playing frisbee, and relaxing on the beach. Logan appeared to be truly pleased, smiling and joke with Thomas in a way I'd never seen before. Watching them interact thrilled my heart, and I hoped that this trip would mark a significant turning point for all of us as the sun began to set, spreading golden hues over the lake. We sat on the beach, relishing the last moments of the day. Thomas had fallen asleep on a blanket, his snores blending with the sound of the waves. Logan and I sat a few feet apart, looking at the horizon. Thank you for coming today, he mumbled after a long silence. It's been lovely just spending time together. I laughed and felt a sense of serenity wash over me. I'm glad we should do this more often. He frequently nodded, his attention focused on the ocean. Yes, I believe it helps. We sat quietly for a little longer, our unsaid understanding filling the stillness. When Thomas awoke, we collected our belongings and drove home, brimming with laughter and memories from the day. That night, as I lay in bed next to Thomas, I reflected on how far we had come as a family. The last 2 weeks had been difficult, but they also drew us closer together in ways I hadn't expected. Logan's